The morning sun spilled across the polished wooden edges of Sunridge Cafe, casting golden streaks onto the worn checkered floor. The smell of fresh bread, melted butter, and rich coffee filled the air, wrapping the small diner in a comforting warmth. For most visitors, it was the kind of place where mornings promised gentle conversation and hearty meals. But for some, the day would unfold differently. At a booth near the corner window sat a young girl in a wheelchair. Her plate of fluffy waffles, drizzled with syrup and topped with a pat of butter, rested before her like a fragile barrier against the world. Her name was Sophie Grant, and while her face carried a quiet strength, an echo of resilience earned through years of struggle, her hands trembled as she reached for her fork. Sophie was born with a spinal condition that left her dependent on a wheelchair, but her parents had always reminded her that her spirit could fly higher than her legs could carry her. She clung to that belief, though daily life often reminded her that the world wasn't always kind. Strangers' stares, whispered comments, and well-meaning yet pitying smiles were all too familiar. On this morning, however, Sophie's quiet anticipation of a normal breakfast was about to be shattered. Across from her, at a table near the center of the diner, a group of teenage boys laughed boisterously. Ethan, the tallest, with a shock of blonde hair and an arrogant grin, leaned back in his chair. Liam, wiry and quick-tongued, elbowed his friend as he whispered something, and Jonah, a stockier boy with a crooked smile, added to their raucous laughter. Their eyes, sharp and gleaming with cruelty, occasionally flicked toward Sophie, but she tried to ignore them. But before we dive into what happens next, I'd love to know, where are you tuning in from today? Drop your country in the comment below and please like the video. Thank you. Now let's continue. The atmosphere was deceptively calm, but the tension was growing, hidden like a storm cloud on the horizon. Sophie tried to focus on her waffles, imagining herself in a world where these small pleasures were safe and undisturbed. The boys' laughter suddenly intensified, their gazes locked on Sophie with an unmistakable edge. Before she could react, Ethan reached across the aisle and slapped her plate from her lap. The waffles tumbled to the floor in a chaotic mess, syrup splattering across the tiles. Gasps echoed through the diner. Patrons turned toward the commotion, some frozen in shock, some quietly shaking their heads, unwilling to intervene. Jonah, seeing Sophie's distress, gave her wheelchair a sharp shove backward, sending her rolling slightly before she managed to regain control. "What's the matter, little girl?" he jeered, his voice dripping with mockery. "Can't handle your breakfast?" Sophie's heart pounded in her chest. Humiliation flared hotter than pain as tears pricked her eyes. She lowered her gaze, struggling to gather her scattered food. Her trembling hands betrayed the anxiety she had worked so hard to contain. Some diners whispered among themselves, disapproval flickering in their eyes, but none of them rose to stop the cruelty. Even the waitress, Clara Benson, paused in the aisle, cups balanced precariously in her hands, fear etched across her face. For Sophie, this was more than embarrassment. It was a sharp reminder of how easily the world could feel like an unkind place, a place that seemed to delight in breaking spirits rather than nurturing them. Just as Sophie bent down, trying to scoop syrup-covered waffles back onto her plate, a hand reached out, not harsh, not impatient, but gentle. An older man, gray at the temples and wearing a well-worn leather jacket, crouched beside her. His eyes held warmth and quiet understanding. He carefully picked up her plate and set it before her. "Ignore them," he said softly, voice calm but firm. His gaze flicked toward the boys, who were now cheering their own audacity, but he didn't approach further. Sophie blinked, startled by the stranger's kindness. For a brief moment, the tension in her chest eased, replaced by a small, flickering hope. Someone had noticed, someone had cared. Still, even with this act of compassion, the weight of exposure lingered. She felt raw, fragile, and acutely aware of every eye in the diner. Once the older man returned to his table, Sophie sat quietly, staring at the syrup-streaked tiles beneath her chair. Her mind wandered to years of whispered cruelty, to the moments when strangers' pitying glances cut deeper than any words. She remembered the countless times she had faced stares that reminded her of her differences. Yet, despite the constant reminders that the world often seemed unfair, Sophie had learned to endure, to protect her spirit even when her body couldn't defend itself. She clenched her fists in her lap, drawing strength from a belief her parents had instilled in her long ago, that she was capable of rising above cruelty, that her value was not defined by others' judgment. As the boys laughed and bragged about their bravery, Sophie closed her eyes and silently prayed for the morning to end quickly, for some sense of normalcy to return. Minutes later, a low, rumbling sound reached the diner, almost like distant thunder. Patrons looked toward the large front windows, their curiosity piqued. The noise grew louder, more distinct. Outside, dozens of motorcycles roared into the parking lot, chrome gleaming in the sunlight. The unmistakable insignia of the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club adorned their leather jackets. The motorcycles parked in precise lines, engines growling like a brewing storm. The boys, who had been so confident moments ago, stiffened. Their laughter faltered, replaced by unease. Everyone in the diner understood the reputation of the Iron Wolves. Fierce, fearless, and unflinching. The door swung open, and a bell jingled softly. Then the silence hit a charged, palpable stillness. A towering man with a thick beard and piercing steel-gray eyes entered, boots heavy on the tiled floor. His vest bore a multitude of patches, each a symbol of battles fought and loyalty earned. Behind him, others followed. The diner seemed smaller now, the air tense with anticipation. Sophie's pulse quickened, a mix of fear and awe coursing through her. The leader, Rafe, scanned the room with a sharp, measured gaze. His eyes locked briefly on Sophie, and a subtle softness replaced his commanding presence. He knelt beside her, as though acknowledging the storm she had weathered that morning. The bullies, realizing they were outmatched, shrank under Rafe's quiet authority. One by one, their bravado melted away. Faces pale, they slid from the booth, avoiding every gaze, stumbling toward the exit with a mix of guilt and fear. Outside, the Iron Wolves motorcycles formed a protective barrier, ensuring the boys' shame was complete before they departed. Inside, diners exhaled collectively, relief washing over them. Rafe turned to the waitress. He placed a thick stack of bills on the table and instructed her to bring Sophie anything she wanted. Her favorite pancakes, milkshakes, pies, anything from the menu. Then, in a gesture that would linger in Sophie's memory forever, Rafe removed his leather vest and draped it gently across her shoulders. "You're part of the family now," he said softly. Tears ran down Sophie's cheeks, not from shame, but from gratitude. Her morning had begun in humiliation and fear, but it ended with protection, acceptance, and a sense of empowerment she hadn't felt in years. The diner remained quiet for a moment, then soft murmurs of admiration and relief spread. Patrons wiped tears from their eyes. The waitress knelt beside Sophie, hugging her gently and promising that no one would ever make her feel invisible in this place again. Sophie felt a surge of hope. She realized that while cruelty existed, courage and kindness could appear in the most unexpected forms. Strangers could become guardians, and even those who appeared fierce could carry the gentlest hearts. Sophie left Sunridge Cafe that day with more than a full stomach. She carried a renewed sense of her own worth and a belief in the power of compassion. She understood that even when the world seemed cruel, there were moments, people, and actions that could rewrite her story. The lesson lingered. Courage, empathy, and kindness could triumph over cruelty, and sometimes a single act could change the course of someone's day, even their life. The story concludes with a reflection for the reader. How would you act if you saw someone being mistreated? Sophie's experience reminds us all to stand with the vulnerable, to speak up, and to show that even small gestures can bring profound transformation. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that kindness and courage can come from the most unexpected places, please take a moment to subscribe to Kindness. Your support helps us share more stories that inspire, heal, and remind the world that compassion is stronger than cruelty. Don't forget to like, comment, and share this video with your friends and family, because together we can create a world where courage and kindness always win. every click, every comment, every share makes a difference. Join our community today, and let's keep spreading hope, one story at a time.